Welcome back to Beagle Eye Visions! We've been getting some amazing knowledge on this episode number 24. Brandon has been breaking down some amazing etymology, some amazing emerald language, and we're learning definitions and how to find the true definition, how to find the truth. Okay? This is good stuff. I get so fired up. I'm ready. Let's loot some more. Let's roam around Boston and get some more knowledge while Brandon walks us through some more green language. All right. Thanks again for choosing Beagle Eye Visions for your entertainment and knowledge.
Now, one thing that anarchy doesn't really guarantee is that you put truth first as its foundational principle. You could not be a slave and still not have the whole aspect of the generative principle activated. So we do have to recognize that we have to understand we need the mystery schools, the mystery traditions, in conjunction with this idea of no masters, no rulers. Otherwise, we won't truly ascend. Yes, we need to end slavery, but there's also levels of expression and evolution that we can go beyond that also. And to get to those levels, we must first get in harmony with natural law and understand objective truth and morality. Otherwise, we'll never be able to reach those potentials. Now, I will be coming back to the topic of anarchy in a future episode. But I just want to make it clear that I like to add spiritual in front of anarchy. So spiritual anarchy, so that we can create more clarity in the definitions, so that we can combine the spirit and matter principle, the sacred masculine and sacred feminine principle, because we do need to understand that this is a spiritual journey, and one could not be a slave and still want slavery for other people. So we have to look at anarchy in its holistic definition rather than a unidirectional, like selfish definition where you're just looking at it from your own eyes, where you can be an anarchist, but you get to do whatever you want to do unto other people. But true freedom and true anarchy involves other people, because freedom involves other people. You know, slavery involves other people. If you're just one person on a planet, if you're completely alone, you know, you cannot be enslaved by another then. If there's nobody else in that universe, nobody else in that construct, nobody there besides you, then you cannot really be a slave to another being. You know, so you have freedom and anarchy and slavery all have to do with other people and with other beings, other spiritual travelers that are co-creating this reality with us. This is why we have to understand these principles. We have to heal the psychological pathologies such as solipsism, because we really need to get into the understanding that we are interacting with other beings here, and that because of that, there are boundary conditions that are set by nature or by God itself, however you want to look at it, so that we can grow and cooperate and voluntarily work together and develop and evolve and move forward as a species. But for those interested in the topic of anarchy, I would highly recommend some authors like Larkin Rose, Benjamin Tucker, Josiah Warren, Lysander Spooner. And from there, I'm sure you could get a good grip over the details of what anarchy is. That's another thing that I see in the anarchist movement, is a lot of people who claim to be anarchist do not actually read anything about anarchy. They don't know any of these people that I just named. It really does take on this form of adolescence, and it really does seem like it's just for people who want to do whatever they want without suffering the consequences. But as we just pointed out, it simply means freedom. And for freedom to come into existence, we have to meet the requirements based upon natural law principles to manifest that condition. So I'm going to read a section out of the book called The End of All Evil by Jeremy Locke, or Locke, depending on how you want to pronounce his last name. This is chapter 2, called Earth, in the section Principle versus Law. So this is on page 9. To understand how evil controls people, it is necessary to understand the difference between principle and law. A principle is a truth that creates freedom. A law is a lie that creates slavery. Principles describe reality. They are knowledge that help you to make use of your world. Because of your intelligence, you recognize principles in everything you do. Every true thing you learn is a principle. The movements of your hands, which foods taste good, mathematics, and empathy for a friend are all based on principles. Laws, that is lowercase laws, man's law, are artificial ideas created by evil men to restrict the thinking and understanding of people. Laws mask themselves in authority so that they can impersonate principles. When people mistake law for principle, their freedom is restricted. When people mistake truth for the ideas of authority, their abilities and their wisdom are diminished. This is the purpose of law. An example of principle can be found in thermodynamics. A liquid is cooler than a gas. This is a principle. Because this is a principle, it does not restrict us, but enables us. Using this principle, we can condense and expand a substance between gas and liquid to create refrigeration. With this principle, we have more understanding and more power. Principles are truths that create freedom. An example of law can be found in the culture of royalty. A commoner owes homage to the king. This is a law. Because this is a law, it destroys freedom and enslaves. Under this law, a person must neglect usage of their own minds, their speech, and their actions. They must believe that they are worth less than the king. Notice that unlike principle, there is no truth in law. It is entirely possible to disrespect the king and therefore to break the law. Law must be enforced because there is no truth in it. A law destroys freedom because it is a lie. A principle, however, creates freedom because it is knowledge. That which destroys freedom is evil. So as we can see, all of this pertains exactly to what I was talking about. Now I'm going to go ahead and continue into the next section, simplicity, because I feel that there is some valuable information. I mean, the whole book is so crucial for people to actually have a copy of. I mean, you can't find this book for less than like $800 or $900. I don't have a physical copy, but I have multiple backup PDF copies of this book. And I've printed out a few copies as well. So I recommend getting this book immediately, especially if you are more interested in understanding natural law and the differences between man's law and natural law. So to continue, the world is simpler than it pretends. So this is in reference to the truth being simple. And this is also in reference to obfuscation. Complexities are found in every aspect of our cultures, politics and economics. Every day, people are introduced to new ideas, new spin, new views, or a new symptom of our world. Many of these ideas are perversions of principle designed to engineer specific reactions from people. Evil societies invent ideas to destroy the free thinking of people. Some of history's names for these ideas have been socialism, fascism, racism, communism, democracy, class warfare, political correctness, propriety, decency, royalty, and terrorism. All of these ideas are created for exactly the same purpose. They are all vehicles to confuse the minds of victims of slavery. They are all evil. You are capable of understanding everything in this world around you. Your intelligence is not limited. Distortions and complexities are introduced into your understanding so that evil men can control you. Evil wants you to believe that you are incapable of understanding your own world. When you understand the magnitude of your own worth, evil will fail. There are two principles relevant to understanding the concept of intelligence. The first is simplicity. The principle of simplicity states that intelligence recognizes truth. When any truth is presented in pure form, all people are capable of understanding it. There is no truth that you cannot learn. This is the principle of simplicity, that intelligence recognizes truth. The second principle is the principle of obfuscation. Obfuscation is the distortion of principle. Obfuscation is the creation of a false idea in order to hide truth. Sometimes this is simply adding ideas on top of truth to disguise the nature of the original truth, even ideas that seem entirely appropriate can be used to bury simple truths. Obfuscation is used by evil to confuse the minds of people. Obfuscation distorts principles so that people will be unable to learn. Evil uses obfuscation so that you will be unable to gain wisdom. It does this to limit your freedom. Culture knows that people will discover fewer truths if they are focused on artificial complexities. As children grow, they learn that seemingly complex ideas are actually basic and simple principles. What may have seemed impossible to understand at one point becomes wonderful once understood. It is good to gain wisdom. With wisdom, you can do anything. Your search for knowledge will become easier for you as you shed any notions of your own inferiority. Evil uses obfuscation to make people feel inferior. You are not inferior to other people, and you are not inferior to ideas. You have infinite worth. So what he's saying here is that principles are truths that we discover in nature, that we recognize and apply in our own lives. Principles are based in conscience. When a being has fully come to the conscious understanding of what the correct behavior should be, they live in harmony with that principle. Man's law is intended to control others through fear of punishment rather than true knowledge into natural law and into the science of morality. Law strives to create obedience based on a dynamic of fear of punishment. Man's law can be seen as the inversion of the recognition of principles. So this is that obfuscation that we're talking about. We are obscuring principles with a proxy system known as man's law, which is there to cover up and hide the true capital L law, which is natural law, or we could just say the law. So as we can see, man's law is based in the low frequency modality of consciousness known as fear. And principles are based in a high frequency consciousness, which is about understanding and it's about knowledge. So it's about having the knowledge and correctly understanding that knowledge. Another way that things get obfuscated is through the hierarchical compartmentalization tactic. Now, I believe Nate spoke on this as he started this topic. This is exactly what we see in our world, is a coercive, hierarchical compartmentalization. But it all serves under one agenda, under one centralized control system. And the way that they keep that from people recognizing that it is all interconnected is through obfuscation. So think of obfuscation as a beautiful, exquisite mask coming at you. Extremely aesthetically pleasing and welcoming. But when the mask is removed, it's this zombified, rotting creature underneath. That's how obfuscation works, it is the mask over top of that rotted being. So I found this quote to be quite accurate. Phil Rockstro has said, "The authoritarianism inherent to this structure is antithetical to the concept of rights and liberties of the individual. Most individuals bound by secrecy, prone, hierarchical values will, over time, lose the ability to display free thinking, engage in civic discourse, and even be able to envisage the notion of freedom." And this is what Nate was talking about with the death of the imagination, because most people cannot even imagine a state different than what we currently have. Another thing that they obfuscate is dominion with the fear of punishment. A person in true dominion is a person who has activated the yin and the yang forces within themselves, unified the sacred masculine and sacred feminine aspects of themselves, which include the left and right brain. They have raised their consciousness and raised their frequency into the solar mind and harmonized with the higher agape frequency, meaning the higher love. So they're not acting out of fear, they're acting out of love. There is a huge difference in consciousness and the effect it has in the physical plane when one is acting out of fear compared to when one is acting out of love. When a person in dominion takes an action, they have for themselves come to recognize natural law, and they understand that the action they're going to take is in harmony with natural law principles, rather than a mindless, unintelligible action based in fear, which is the only thing that you understand is, hey, I'm going to be punished either through a fine, like financially, or actually physically, where your body may be in jeopardy. You might get thrown in a prison, definitely at risk of being shot. So we do have to recognize the difference between these types of actions, and this is why they seek to obfuscate it. Another thing that they obfuscate is gnosis with belief. They obfuscate the idea that direct experience is somehow equal to belief. So you could believe anything and it becomes direct experience. And there is a dramatic difference between having a direct experience of natural law and even just believing in natural law. Even though we all have had direct experience of natural law, there's a difference between being conscious of that direct experience or being unconscious of that direct experience. You cannot do the right thing by accident. This is because a right action means that you have correctly understood that the action is right. It means that you have to be conscious of the true moral compass that is telling you whether the action is correct or not. And we also have to look at the consequences of that action to tell. So it's a little bit utilitarian when it comes to consequences, because there is some utilitarian purpose when it comes to not receiving negative consequences. But we have to be very careful with utilitarianism. We don't want to become Borg mind. So, and maybe I'll give a little allegorical breakdown of the Borg in the future, but back on topic. So gnosis can be defined as understanding based on the direct experience of a thing or an event that has taken place. So you don't believe that this has happened. You know it has happened because you actually experienced that event. But it's even more than just knowing that it had happened. It's the correct understanding of what has happened. Because our perceptions can waver dramatically away from the truth. Just because you've experienced something doesn't mean that you've correctly understood what you have experienced. So that's why I say it is the correct understanding of an event that has taken place that you have personally experienced. Belief, which is what all religions are based off of, is about being gullible enough to blindly believe in what somebody else has told you that has come before you. So the idea here is that one person has stuck their hand in the boiling pot of water and they have gnosis of being burned from that pot of water, boiling pot of water, and then that person tells another person that it will burn them, and that person believes them that it will burn them, but they have no direct experience of that. And this is why I always tell people you should not believe anything that I'm saying. Don't believe anything you've heard on this podcast. Go out and do the research for yourself and experience it yourself. Look back on the experiences of your lives and become conscious of the possible experiences that you've already had that can help explain these things further. The next one is individuality is obfuscated with culture. Now, this is a big one, and I would highly recommend reading the chapter or segment in that book, The End of All Evil, on culture. And if I have the time, I will read it, but I don't think I'll have the time. All the value within us as a species is carried also within the individual. This makes me think of the quote from Robert Anton Wilson. Groups are grammatical fictions. Only individuals exist, and each individual is different. And then I think there was a great quote by... There's a great statement that Terence McKenna said over and over. Culture is your enemy. It is not your friend. And I would have to agree with this. Culture seeks to consume you and turn you into it. It wants to mold you in its image, when in fact it should be the individuals that are creating culture. But because of the power dynamic and what goes on within culture and who runs everything in culture, we have a dramatic different effect from that, where everybody is molded because of the culture that they are in. The individual is unique. It is a unique expression of consciousness, one of a kind, but also connected to the all and connected to the many. So you can't have the two without the one. You can't have a group without a single individual. And that's why Anton Wilson is saying that they are grammatical fictions, because they really don't exist. All that really exists are the individuals, the unique components that make up the whole. That's what really exists. Now, this is not to be taken to the extreme of solipsism, where people only think there is one individual, which would kind of be a antithetical statement, because the idea to be an individual means that you've been individuated from something else. So there would have to be something else for you to be an individual in itself. But the point is that you might take it in the solipsism, and we don't want to take it in the solipsism where you think that you are alone by the self, which is pretty much just a God complex run amok. So like I said, culture tries to get you to mold to its preferences and what it thinks to be right and true. So often, more often than not, but not always, but more often than not, what it is trying to teach you and get you to do that it's saying is right is actually not correct. Now, the culture doesn't have to be this way. It can be changed. It's just a condition. But the point is that currently the culture that we are in tries to teach us to do a lot of things based on moral relativism rather than objective morality. It is that way because of the people who came before us and the people who control everything. But most people just go along with it to get along, right? That's the saying, go along to get along. But really, we're not getting along. And we can see this. We're living in chaos. And this is because people don't really understand their individual sovereignty. They don't understand the spiritual laws that govern the behavioral consequences that we receive here. And until we get that, we're not going to make a change. And I'm going to continue to repeat that over and over because this is really about changing things. I mean, that word is also synchronistic in a way too, because what do we say? We say we put our time and attention on things. We pay attention to something and we spend time on it. And what do we get in return? We get change in return. So what we put our time and attention onto will determine what kind of change we're going to get, you know, depending on what the exchange will be, right? So I just thought that was kind of interesting. So what they try to teach you is that culture is your individual identity, but that's not the true individual identity. The true identity of the capital S self, the higher self, and the real self is pure consciousness experiencing itself in a multitude of forms. Another one, which is kind of self-obvious, is obfuscating truth with lies. They will tell you the most ridiculous lies, and then they become somehow magically the arbiters of truth. So they can just make it up as they go along. It has to do with moral relativity and solipsism, and it's just this whole bogus idea that one gets to govern what the truth is and that they own the truth. They have some claim of ownership over the truth. And then you must obey and believe their truth because they are superior to you. Another obfuscation technique is obfuscating good with evil. So they will convince you that the most evil and absurd actions are actually good for you. And then you'll go out and do them over and over and over and over. I'll keep doing this kind of like a hamster in a wheel, but expecting one result, but keep getting another result. The dark occult sorcerers want you to believe that you can actually get good things by doing things that are harmful to others. And this is about ego attachment because people egoly identify with their patterns in their lives, with the programs that they're basing their entire paradigm off of. So people become attached to the way that they are doing things because it's their comfort zone. And even if you show them that it's the wrong way, that it's not going to get them their result, sometimes they'll even fight you tooth and nail to the end before they will change that behavior. Okay, folks, that is all we have time for on this episode of the CubbyWhole. So we have got through all the techniques of obfuscation that I wanted to cover. Obviously, there are so many more that we could cover, but I feel like that's the general basic ones that you do need to have a grip over. Now, the next episode, I will be moving into the next methods of manipulation, and I will be going through them a bit quicker than this one. A couple of them I might linger on a little bit longer, but we should get through them pretty quickly. I hope you found clarity and value in this show today, and you can find more shows, presentations, and news here at the CubbyWhole website, CubbyWhole.com, CubbyWhole.com. Also, please make sure to keep your eyes out for future shows as we go further into mind control. And as for now, a new show comes out every Monday at 6 p.m. PT, that's Pacific time, and every Friday at 12 p.m. PT. Stay tuned for more. Thank you, and keep transcending dogma.
Yes, stay golden and stay tuned. Alright. Made it through another episode here. Made it to Good Neighbor. Made it through downtown Boston. No crashes. Oh, she can handle that. Alright. Thank you for choosing Beagle Eye Visions. Thank you if you made it this far. And like I said, stay tuned and stay golden. I'm going to be doing some more episodes.